On February 24, 2023, the world was shocked by a brutal murder that happened in Hong Kong. The tragic murder of a 20-year-old model and influencer, Abby Choi. What started as a missing persons report ended up being a very tragic and disturbing murder. In this video, we're gonna talk about the timeline of the events, the people involved, and the shocking details that emerged during the investigation. This is the story of Abby Choi, a tale of fame, betrayal, and a devastating end. Welcome back to Beauty and Crime Sunday with me, in which I do my skincare while I talk about the challenge stories I found this week. So if this is something you might enjoy, please think of subscribing. Now let's actually start with the story. Abby Choi wasn't just another pretty face on Instagram. At only 28 years old, she had already made a name for herself in Hong Kong, most known for in the fashion scene. And she was also starting to break international news. She had worked with a lot of major names like Vogue just a month before her disappearance. She was also spotted in Paris, rubbing shoulders with some of the biggest names in the industry, even walking on an Ellie Saab show. We're basically talking about next level fashion here. Not just the typical brand deals, but runaway level recognition. Her last social media post really said it all. From Hong Kong to the cover of L'Officiel and MOA, my journey as a style icon continues. Grateful for the recognition and the ongoing support along the way. Everything seemed to go perfectly for Abby Choi at this point. She was stylish, successful, and from the outside, she was living the dream. But behind the luxury and spotlight, as you imagine, nothing really is what it looks like. And something very dark was happening under closed doors. After her divorce with Alex Wong, Abby entered a new chapter in her life with another man. This time, a businessman named Chris Tam, also known as Krishna. Chris wasn't just anyone. His family was behind one of the trendiest Hong Kongese restaurant chains. The name was Tam Jai Yunnan Mission. Together, Abby and Chris had two more children, a boy and a girl. And here is where it gets a little bit unusual in the story. They held a wedding ceremony, but the actual paperwork was never done, so they were never technically legally married. Despite that, Abby didn't seem to care and looked like she was thriving. She shared a very polished, careful, curated life online, posting everything from fashion shoots to philanthropic efforts. She came across as someone who had it all: career, kids, a strong public image, and even a very good relationship with her ex-husband and the new family. In fact, Abby was still close with her ex-in-laws, and they shared parent duties, also took family trips together, and believe it or not, even had business ties with them. From the outside, it looked like her family life was perfect. It looked like a very mature co-parenting setup. But then everything changed after. On February 21st, Abby was on her way back to pick up her daughter from school. But that was the last time anyone saw her alive. She suddenly stopped posting, which, you know, if you're an influencer, that's a very red flag. Wasn't answering messages or calls, and never actually made it to pick up her daughter from school. For someone who has been active her whole life in social media, this was definitely weird. Her family grew very worried, and it quickly became very clear that something very bad was happening. Thanks to the cooperations of the second husband of Abby, Investigators were able to piece some clues as a timeline for Abby's disappearance, and this is where things started to get very suspicious. One of the very first red flags: the last person to see Abby Choi alive wasn't really a stranger, no. It was her driver. The same person who's supposed to take care of her, pick her up from places, and take her safely to other places. But this wasn't just any driver, no. It was Anthony Wong. Who is this Anthony Wong, you may ask? Well, the surname should ring some bells. Wong, as the brother-in-law, the brother of her first husband, Alex Wong. That detail by itself shifted the whole investigation to another path. Police quickly started to feel suspicious about the in-laws, including her ex-husband, the ex-brother-in-law, and the ex-parents. And as they started digging, the pieces of the puzzle were not really fitting. The stories they were telling the police were not really matching, and soon one possible motive for the murder was starting to stand out: money. Apparently, in the years leading to her disappearance, Abby and the ex-husband were having many disputes about the ownership of several luxury properties and land holdings, some which were technically in Abby's name, but they were being managed by the Wong's family. The situation had started to escalate to the point of legal conflict, and one of the last times that Abby was seen alive, she had reportedly been fighting with Alex about money. According to multiple sources, Alex was not really doing great. He had a lot of financial problems. He was said to be in debt, and tensions with Abby over some shared assets were reaching a boiling point. All of this raised a terrifying question: could greed and desperation lead to the ex-in-laws to do something unthinkable? As the investigation deepened, it turned out there were more than one. There were even more conflicts, including a very major conflict with one luxury apartment. And that's when everything started to escalate. So police started to launch a very thorough investigation to find Abby, because this was starting to be very suspicious. The last known footage of Abby came from a CCTV camera. She's seen walking down the street, supposedly on her walk to pick up her daughter. But as we already know, she never made it. So what happened? Police then turned their attention to the car that was driven by Anthony Wong. According to reports, traces of blood were found in that car. And using the GPS data, they did track Anthony's route through that day. And it led to a very specific location, an apartment in the Tai Po district of Hong Kong, rented earlier that month by the in-laws, specifically by the former father-in-law, Huang Kao. But the place, when the police entered, the place was eerily empty, very clean and furnished and barely lived in. And then they came into a horrifying discovery. On February 24, 2023, just 3 days after Abby was reported missing, authorities found her dismembered parts through the apartment. Some of her body parts, specifically her legs and the lower body, were found in a freezer. Yes, a freezer. And other parts of her body had signs of having been cooked inside the property. Investigators also found an array of disturbing tools and materials inside that house: a meat grinder, an electric saw, a hammer, black raincoats, face masks and gloves, and even Abby's handbag that she was wearing the same day that she ended up disappearing. It was clear this wasn't just a random act of violence. This had been planned. It was methodical and very deeply disturbing. The tools found in the apartment, the saw, the grinder, the protective gear had clearly been used to try to dispose Abby's body. And it didn't really take long for the police to classify this as murder. But on February 25, 2023, just one day after her remains were found, the first arrests were made. Authorities detained Anthony Wong, Abby's ex-brother-in-law, along with his parents, Abby's former in-laws, and shortly after, both Anthony and Kwon Kwao, the ex-father-in-law, were charged with murder. Abby's former mother-in-law, however, Jenny Lee, was also arrested, but on separate charges: obstruction of justice, destroying of evidence, and attempting to cover up the murder. But there was still someone missing in this. Alex Wong, Abby's ex-husband, the man at the center of the legal and financial disputes with Abby, and he was on the run. Determined to catch him, one of Abby's friends, a businessman known as Paolo Oghetti, offered a 2 million Hong Kong dollar reward for any information that could lead to Alex's arrest. Not long after, a Taiwanese influencer, Doris, added another 1 million to the reward pool. With public pressure mounting, the manhunt intensified, and finally authorities ended up catching him. Thank God. Alex Wong was arrested at a pier in Lantau Island, allegedly trying to flee Hong Kong on a speedboat or a jet ski, that wasn't very clear, headed for mainland China. He was carrying 500,000 Hong Kongese dollars in cash, along with a collection of luxury items. Most of them were watches worth as estimated $4 million. Once in custody, like the others, Alex was charged with the murder of Abby Choi. After his arrest, he claimed he wasn't feeling well and was taken to a hospital. But just as that was happening, police made another chilling discovery. On February 26, Abby's head was found, along with some ribs and hair, all inside a very large pot of soup. Yes, a soup. The pot was filled with grease, radishes, carrots, and what investigators believed to be human meat. And police later stated, when we found the two soup pots, one was nearly full. It was covered in thick layers of fat and included vegetables and believed to be human meat inside. It was final how gruesome the murder probably had been. What police found in that typo house painted a picture of cold, calculated horror. The killers had clearly calculated and prepared for what they were going to do. The entire apartment was covered in sailboat tarp, a thick plastic meant to catch blood and the blood stains from reaching the walls or the floor. The suspects even wore a waterproof face shield and protective gear so no blood would stain them while they were dismembering the body. This wasn't a spontaneous act, no. This was calculated, prepared, very chilling. And then there was the most chilling question of all. Why cook the remains? At first, police believed that maybe the cooking was supposed to be a way of getting rid of the body. And me too, I also thought the same. Okay, maybe they tried to melt it and whatever to get rid of the body. But later, they discovered something more unsettling. The pot where Abby's head and ribs were boiling. It wasn't just water boiling. It was seasoned soup. As I said before, it had radishes, carrots, and very thick grease. And some experts and investigators speculated about this because, it is a little weird. And some of them speculated that, it's very probable that they tried to, or they had an intention of consuming the remains. According to the police spokesperson, Alan Chung, the autopsy revealed that Abby's head had a very massive hole on her back, right behind her right ear, believed to have been probably caused by a very heavy blunt object. Investigators now really believe that Abby was probably attacked inside the vehicle, possibly by her ex-brother-in-law, and either was rendered unconscious all the way to the house or killed instantly. From there, her body was transported to the apartment, where the suspects began carrying the horrifying murder and the dismemberment of the body to try to eliminate all the evidence. Even with several arrests and horrific discoveries, so many parts of this case are still unresolved, including the exact timeline of the events, the full motivations, and whether more people were involved in the murder. But even after the horrifying discoveries in the Taipo apartments, it didn't really end up there. To this day, parts of Abby Choi was never found, including her hands and torso. In an urgent effort to find her body, the Hong Kong police launched a very massive investigation kind of like a search operation to try to find of the missing remains, involving divers, search dogs, and teams combing through very near waters, sewers, drainage systems, anything they could think of. They have also called the local residents to come forward with any information they might know. And then actually it came a critical lead. Investigators learned that on the morning of February 22nd, some of the suspects had been carrying very large garbage black bags, possibly to dispose of key evidence. This led police to search the Ta Ku Ling landfill, hoping to recover Abby Choi's missing parts, maybe Abby's clothing, phone, or even the rest of her remains. On top of that, there was some suspicious behavior happening in the Jungbai cemetery, another potential dumping site. So authorities wasted no time in going there and tried to find anything suspicious. But that's not all. On February 26, a new person was arrested. A woman named Ning Chi Mei was reportedly the mistress of Abby's ex-father-in-law, Kong Kao. She was accused of aiding Alice Wong during his escape attempt, so she helped him. But after his failed getaway on the speedboat, it was revealed he had been hiding in the apartment rented by her, who had also helped secure the Taipo flat where Abby's remains were found. So the very next day, on February 27, all four main suspects, including Alex Wong, were formally charged in the murder of Abby Choi. They stood accused of murder, obstruction of justice, and evidence tampering. The court denied bail, meaning they would remain in the pre-trial detention while the investigation continued. So, also, the case of Abby Choi, a woman who mostly walked runways in Paris, now was the center of one of the Hong Kong's most chilling murder cases, took yet another dark and complex turn. The case was so complex and gruesome that the court decided to postpone the proceedings. All suspects had their hearings delayed until May 8th of 2023, giving investigators more time to gather evidence, complete the forensic reports, and also build a very solid case. But while the murder charges were the center of attention, more layers of Alex Wong's criminal history began to surface. It turns out Alex Wong wasn't really just being charged for murder. He had been previously charged with financial crimes, including investment scams run through social media, and as As police dug deeper into Alex Wong, 7 other theft-related cases appeared, spanning nearly a decade of crimes. On March 2nd, yet another arrest was made. This case never ends. This time it was Lam Tze-ho, a 41-year-old man who worked for a yacht rental company. Police was believed to be paid 300,000 Hong Kongese dollars, which is around 36,000 euros. Alex flee Hong Kong by boat. It was Lam who allegedly arranged the speedboat in which Alex was trying to run away with. And then it came the latest arrest. A woman named Fung Tze-yim, believed to be connected to the case, possibly for harboring suspects or assisting with concealing effort. But perhaps the most definitive and heartbreaking confirmation became later. Authorities completed DNA testing on the remains found in the soup recovered from the Taipo apartment. The results confirmed what everyone suspected. It was Abby Choi's remains. There was no doubt that the 28-year-old woman had not only been murdered, but dismembered, and in the most horrifying way possible. The suspected mastermind along this case was believed to be Wong Kao, Alex Wong's father. A former decorated police officer had previously been forced to resign amid serious accusations of essay and financial misconduct. So the family has some past, and it doesn't seem like a very legal family. At the heart of the tragedy basically means a dispute over money and property, specifically the luxury apartment, which was in one of the prestigious addresses in Hong Kong, home to many of the city's wealthiest families. Abby's mother has obviously taken steps to actually block the sale of that apartment by the Kwon family, demanding the court to declare Abby the rightful beneficial owner. This would ensure that Abby's kids actually take the property and it doesn't remain under the control of the Wong's family. Currently, I don't know if this really has changed, but last time Abby's mother kept the custody of the children, continuing to actually fight for protecting the kids' rights. One of the main theories surrounding the murder might be because, as I said before, Abby and Chris were never legally married. So if she died, all her ownership properties would go to the kids. And the kids were Alex's kids. So even though he didn't directly have the money, it would be the kids' money. He would be the one partially controlling the money, him and his family, the Wong family. But another angle also involves tax evasion crimes connecting to the apartments. Reportedly, the apartment or the property was put on Abby's father-in-law's name, allegedly to dodge around 8 million Hong Kongese dollars in taxes. Kwon was also believed to want to sell that property, but other family members, including Abby, opposed to this idea. Police sources says that when Abby tried to move on and have a new chapter in her life, her ex-father-in-law was unwilling to let that happen, and tensions were growing until tragedy struck. The impact of this tragedy goes beyond just one family. Today, Taoist rituals were held in Taipo, the site where Abby's remains were found, in a solemn effort to bring peace to the Taipo area and let her spirit go, since it was gone in such a brutal way. Although the authorities say that it seemed clear, investigators are still kind of going, and no major updates are expected before. One emerging timeline suggests that Abby Choi's ex-brother-in-law, Anthony, was the last person to pick her up that day. Driver driving in a 7-seater vehicle to her daughter's school. But just as they neared the Lion Rock Tunnel, the car reportedly stopped, and at that moment, Alex Wong allegedly entered the vehicle. What happened after that remains unclear. Well, this tragic case, a chilling reminder that wealth, power, and family conflicts can spiral into unimaginable dark. Thanks for watching. Also tell me what you thought about this case, and remember, always do your skincare, and if you don't end up like a glazed donut at the end of it, you're not doing it right. Bye bye.